I took the paper and put it in my dresser drawer, and I went to bed. And after that, the paper seemed to disappear. I never found it again. And the next morning, the memories were fading, and they eventually faded, and I'd forgotten the entire incident. But getting back to how it all started, my dad remembered the incident that I had with him up to the point where they came back a second time. He didn't remember that. But he remembered everything else. And he said, I thought that was a dream. And when he confirmed that he had the same memories as me, that was what made me write to Budd Hopkins. And about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. And my mother had him on the phone. And she called me and she said, Budd Hopkins is on the phone. And I said, you're kidding. I didn't expect him to call. And so I took the phone, and he said, I got your letter. And he says, it sounds to me like you've had an experience, an abduction experience. And he said, I wondered if you might be able to come to visit me in New York City. He said, do you have a holiday coming up or anytime soon? And I said, yeah, actually. I said, I've got a holiday for a week. I was going to go to Owen Sound to visit my best friend. But I said, I guess I could come to New York. And he said, well, what I can do for you is you can stay here in my art studio in Manhattan. And he said, if you take the Sky Bus out here, it's like a jet, but it's a smaller jet. And a lot of businessmen use it for traveling. And he said it's a cheaper fare. And it'll have you here in about an hour, hour and a half or so. And he said, you can stay in my studio. It's a fully furnished apartment with a bed. But he says, I won't be here. He says, I'll be at my house in Cape Cod. And he said, but my friend Ted Boucher will meet you at the airport and get you here. And he said, once you're here, he says, I've scheduled, or I'm going to schedule 3 hypnosis sessions with Dr. Aphrodite Clamar, which is the doctor that did the hypnosis sessions for the people in his book, Missing Time. He also booked a meeting with a behavioral therapist that I guess is a standard procedure when he was doing abduction investigations. And this woman, her job was to determine that I wasn't crazy and that I wasn't doing it for attention or anything like that, and to make sure that I was honest. And so I went to visit her, and she was a vegetarian, and she asked me to join her for lunch, and I said, well, okay, but I wasn't sure what kind of food she was going to give me. And she gave me some kind of a smoothie that was made with sunflower seeds ground up. And I hated it. I drank this stuff, but it tasted like wallpaper paste to me. It was like really horrible. And anyway, she gave me a number of tests. One of them was the Rorschach test with the ink blots. And I found a number of images in it and got into a lot of detail about what I was seeing. One of them was like a golden idol on the edge of a cliff, and there was rust stains coming down from whatever they used to mount it on there. And I was seeing all this amazing imagery. And then after that, she gave me an IQ test, and then a general knowledge test about the history of the United States, which I felt was a little bit unfair because I'm Canadian, you know. But it turned out I knew more about the history of the United States than I did about Canadian history. And I was able to name at least a dozen presidents. And so from those tests, she made a report up and gave it to Budd, and it stated that I was relatively intelligent, that I had a pretty good general knowledge of things, and that she didn't feel that I was faking it or doing it for attention or anything like that, and that I had a very good imagination, which I assume she determined from the Rorschach test. And so anyway, I went for 2 hypnosis sessions with Dr. Aphrodite Clamar, and the 3rd session didn't happen with her. Actually, Budd showed up about halfway through the week, and his friend Ted Blocher that had been sort of taking me around, and he said Budd couldn't resist it. You know, whenever there's somebody, he's got to come, he's got to show up because he can't resist it. And so Budd actually did the 3rd hypnosis session with me, and he was paying Dr. Clamar with artwork. She had several of his pieces hanging on the walls in her office, and he called them guardians, and he had them also hanging in his studio where I was staying. So while I was in his studio one day, this is kind of in the heart of Manhattan, and I looked at the back window and I saw this ladder come down in the window well, and I thought, what's going on here? And then I see this guy coming down the ladder, a big guy, and he's got a tool belt on, and he's feeling around the window. And he didn't see me. So I'm standing there staring at him, and he looks inside all of a sudden, and he spotted me, and he smiles and he waves, and back up the ladder he went, you know. So I told Budd about this later on, and he says, why didn't you call the police? He said, the guy would have been broken in. If you hadn't been there, he would have broken in, you know. I said, well, I don't know. I didn't know if he was a maintenance man or what. He had a tool belt on and everything. He looked professional. But so anyway, Budd invited me to a party that he was going to have at his studio, and it wasn't really like a party, but he ordered some pizza and pop and stuff, and basically he got several of the other people in New York that had abductions to come down and meet me. So it was like a group of all these abductees, and so we all met at his studio, and I took some pictures, and I don't know if you can see the pictures, but I keep them with me. This one here is myself with 3 of the other abductees, 2 of the women and 1 guy. And one of the women is Rosemary Osmato, and she has a YouTube video of describing her case. And the other one used to work for Arista Records, which is the label that Barry Manilow recorded on. And this other picture here is actually 4 abductees, not including me. And this is Ted Boucher, the guy that picked me up at the airport and brought me to the studio. He was Bud's friend. This is a picture that I took in the studio of Bud and Ted Boucher. And while I was there, Bud took me to visit this character that is also mentioned in his book. He was an older guy that owned a liquor store in Manhattan, and his name was George Obarski. And this is a picture of George Obarski that I took when I went to his liquor store. And George, when he was opening his liquor store up one morning, very early in the morning, I guess, he spotted a ship in the park across the street from the liquor store. And there were some beings out there with little shovels, and they appeared to be taking soil samples from the park. And so that's how he got involved with Bud. And then Bud told me that if I want to continue investigating my case, he said, when you go back to St. Catharines, get in touch with a group called MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. And so when I came back to St. Catharines, I was all excited about what I'd just been through in New York City. And I found out that in a couple of weeks, there was going to be a MUFON symposium in Toronto. And so I made plans to go there. I wanted to go there. I thought if MUFON is going to be there, that's the place to meet them. And so I went to the symposium, and I met up with some guys there that claimed to be UFO investigators. And I thought these guys were from MUFON. And it turned out that they were from a group called QFORN, which is the Canadian UFO Research Network. And they had a bulletin that they published, the QFORN bulletin, and this is the one that they released with my case in it. They took over the investigation from there, from where Budd Hopkins left off, and they investigated my case. They found a hypnotist in Toronto, a woman that could do the work. But this woman had never worked with an abductee before, a UFO abductee. The extent of her hypnotic knowledge was helping people quit smoking and lose weight and that kind of thing. And so for her, this was kind of a challenge, but she took it on, and she did a number of hypnosis sessions on me, and a lot of stuff was surfacing. There was other incidents were surfacing, and I was remembering all kinds of stuff that the fragments of memory had now become like a full incident. And that was the van incident that I just spoke about. And there was a lot of other incidents that came out. And, well, she didn't really know how to handle my case because she'd never really done one before. So the three members of QFORN, Harry Tokars, Joe Muscat, and Larry Fenwick, they were there during the sessions, and they told her to call Dr. Leo Sprinkle at the University of Wyoming, because he'd worked with thousands of abductees, and he knew how to proceed very well. So she called him right there in the office, and we were listening to this one-sided conversation she was having with him. And I guess he walked her through it and told her exactly what to do and how to proceed with it. And so once that was established, the sessions went very well, and they were very productive. A lot of information was coming out. But we also found that we had some interference. And we had interference on the phone lines. There was clicking sounds on Harry Tokar's phone. He ran an entertainment agency with his girlfriend. And one day the phone rang and his girlfriend picked it up. And somebody with kind of a mechanical sounding voice said to her, "You and they must stop what you're doing right now." And she said, "Who is this?" And he said, "You must cease this activity right now." And she was shocked. And at that moment, Harry came in the door, and he saw her just standing there holding the phone, looking at it with this horrified look on her face. And we started getting all kinds of incidents of things going wrong, bad luck, especially for the hypnotist that was working on my case. Her and her boyfriend had gone to Las Vegas for a holiday, and they lost a ton of money. And they had a big fight, and they broke up, and she didn't want to talk to anybody from Q4, and she wouldn't answer her calls, wouldn't return the calls, and just a whole slew of bad luck seemed to happen to all of us after that. And so that's basically where the investigation finished. There were a couple of other journals had published my case. One was Flying Saucer Review, and it says Canadian rock band abducted, and that is available on the internet. And MUFON also did a journal on it, and Q4 is no longer in existence. They closed down, but if you happen to collect any MUFON journals from years ago, this was from 1983. It's May 1st, and it's issue number 183. So anyway,